The reflection in the private elevator mirror showed an impeccable man in a tailored Italian suit. Maxwell Carter adjusted his burgundy tie with a precise, practiced movement. His dark brown eyes, shadowed by sleepless nights, scrutinized every detail of his appearance with the same intensity he applied to his company's financial reports. Mr. Carter, the board meeting starts in 5 minutes. Regina, his executive assistant of over a decade, reminded him through the elevator intercom. I'll be there in 2, he replied dryly. Watching the digital display mark the 47th floor of Carter Tower, a symbol of power in Boston's financial district. As the elevator doors opened onto the Italian marble corridor, Regina waited, holding a sleek black briefcase and wearing her usual apprehensive expression. What's the issue? He asked, grabbing the briefcase and heading toward the boardroom. The Social Responsibility Department moved the Sunshine Haven Orphanage visit to this afternoon. The press has been notified, and the council is highly invested after last month's incident. Maxwell froze. The incident, as his PR team euphemistically referred to it, had been a devastating headline about unethical labor practices at one of Carter Corp's subsidiaries. The orphanage visit was part of a carefully orchestrated plan to rehabilitate the company's image. 2 hours, he finally said, not a minute more. At precisely 2 p.m., Maxwell's Aston Martin cruised out of Boston's financial heart and into the quieter suburbs. The Victorian building of Sunshine Haven stood weathered but resilient, its exposed brick walls carrying decades of stories. Mr. Carter, welcome, greeted Catherine Morrison, the orphanage's director, her handshake firm and her light blue eyes both hopeful and wary. She guided him through hallways adorned with children's drawings. The air carried a peculiar mix of disinfectant and crayons. The children are excited about your visit. We rarely have guests of your stature, she remarked as they entered the courtyard. The sound of children's laughter filled the air. Maxwell's eyes scanned the group until they landed on a small girl with uneven pigtails and an extraordinary confidence in her green eyes. I know you, she declared, her voice steady as she stood before him. Her blue dress had a faint ink stain, and her white sneakers were untied. Maxwell felt a jolt of recognition. The child's gaze was unsettlingly familiar. Clara, Catherine called out, flustered. I'm sorry, Mr. Carter. Clara has an active imagination. Maxwell's voice softened despite himself. What's your full name? Clara Rose Martinez, the girl answered, smiling. You're the man in my mom's photo. The surname Martinez hit him like a freight train. Memories from 20 years ago rushed back. Memories of Lucia Martinez. A chapter of his life he'd buried deep. That's impossible, he muttered. But Clara tugged on his hand. Come on, she urged. I want to show you something. For the first time in years, Maxwell found himself following instead of leading, his carefully constructed world unraveling. Catherine's office was modest but organized. Maxwell sat stiffly, his fingers drumming the arm of the chair as she leafed through files. Clara arrived 3 months ago. Catherine began. Her mother, Lucia Martinez, passed away from cancer. Clara's been in our care ever since. The name Lucia pierced Maxwell's defenses. Memories of summer days in Cambridge and whispered promises under starlit skies came flooding back. Cause of death, he asked. It was quick, Catherine replied gently. She left Clara with a neighbor while undergoing treatment. But she didn't make it. A soft knock interrupted them. Clara entered, holding a photo. I found it, she exclaimed, showing Maxwell the image of a young man with an arm around a vibrant woman with green eyes. Mom said this was from when she met true love at Harvard. Clara said with pride. Maxwell stared at the photo, his throat tightening. It was him, 20 years younger, full of dreams he had since traded for ambition. Back in his penthouse, Maxwell opened an envelope Regina had delivered earlier. Inside was a letter Lucia had written but never sent. Dear Maxwell, asterisk if you're reading this. I'm no longer here. Clara has your eyes and your heart. I'm not asking for forgiveness for keeping her a secret. We both made choices that night you left. You chose your empire. I chose our daughter. But now, I need to ask something I never thought I would. Take care of her, not out of guilt, but because she deserves to know the part of you the world doesn't see, the part that still believes in second chances. Asterisk. Asterisk with love. Lucia. Asterisk. The words felt like a punch to the gut. He picked up his phone. Regina. Contact the legal department. I need documents for an adoption process. When Maxwell arrived at the orphanage the next day, Clara ran to him, her face lighting up. You came back. Maxwell knelt to her height, handing her the photo. Of course. I promised. Didn't I? Clara's eyes widened. Most grown-ups break their promises. I'm not most grown-ups. Maxwell replied. He paused, then added, Clara, how would you feel about coming home with me? The girl hesitated, her small hands clutching his. Really? You're not going to leave? Never, he promised, his voice steady. The court hearing for Clara's custody was a media frenzy, with reporters camped outside. Clara's maternal relatives contested Maxwell's petition, questioning his fitness as a father. The judge listened carefully to both sides before calling Clara to speak. The little girl stood bravely. When my mom was in the hospital, she said I should be brave. She also said my dad had a big heart. I think she was right. He's trying to make things right. And that's what Mom said good people do. Maxwell's throat tightened as he listened. For the first time in his life, he felt vulnerable but resolute. When the gavel fell, granting him custody, Clara ran into his arms. I knew you'd keep your promise, she whispered. Months later, their home on Beacon Hill was filled with laughter. Clara's room was painted in soft pastels, adorned with daisies, her mother's favorite flower. Maxwell had transformed from a corporate titan into a doting father, learning how to braid hair and sing Let It Go without embarrassment. One evening, as they sat under the stars with a telescope Maxwell had used as a child, Clara pointed to the sky. Mom's up there, isn't she? Yes, Maxwell replied, his voice thick with emotion. She's the brightest star, always watching over us. Clara leaned her head on his shoulder. She'd be proud of you. Dad. Maxwell hugged her tightly, tears streaming down his face. I hope so. Sweetheart, I hope so. As winter transitioned into spring, Maxwell found himself adapting to a life that no longer revolved solely around quarterly reports and board meetings. The once cold Beacon Hill estate now felt like a sanctuary, buzzing with the energy of a young child who saw the world through untainted eyes. One Saturday morning, Clara burst into his office, her hands smudged with paint and her cheeks glowing. Dad, come look, she exclaimed, tugging on his sleeve. Maxwell followed her to the sunlit kitchen, where a canvas lay on the table. A painting of three stick figures stood beneath a bright yellow sun. Clara explained, This is me, Mom, and you. See? Mom's the angel up there, watching over us. Maxwell smiled, his chest tightening. It's beautiful, he said softly, kneeling to her level. Can I keep it in my office? Clara grinned and nodded. But only if you hang it where everyone can see. Their lives slowly melded into a rhythm. Maxwell learned how to juggle his demanding career with Clara's needs. He made time for school drop-offs, attended parent-teacher meetings, and even volunteered for career day at her school. When Maxwell entered Clara's classroom wearing a tailored suit, the children were awestruck. What do you do, Mr. Carter? A boy asked. Maxwell glanced at Clara, who was beaming proudly. I help people solve problems and make big decisions, he said. But my most important job is being Clara's dad. Clara's teacher leaned in, whispering, She talks about you all the time. She's proud of you. For the first time in years, Maxwell felt a deep sense of fulfillment that had nothing to do with corporate success. One evening, Maxwell sat with Clara on the couch as she flipped through a photo album Catherine had given them. The album documented Clara's early years with her mother, Lucia. Mom loved to read, Clara said, pointing to a picture of Lucia holding a book. She said stories helped her dream. Maxwell chuckled. She used to read to me, too. When we were at Harvard, she'd sneak into the library and bring me novels to balance out my economics books. Clara's eyes sparkled with curiosity. Can you tell me a story about her? Maxwell paused, recalling a specific memory. Once, during finals week, I was so stressed I refused to leave the library. Your mom walked in with a guitar she didn't know how to play. She serenaded me in front of everyone until I laughed so hard I couldn't focus anymore. That was Lucia, always finding a way to remind me to live a little. Clara giggled. I wish I could have seen that. Maxwell kissed the top of her head. She would have loved to see the amazing girl you've become. Despite the joy, challenges persisted. The media remained relentless, publishing stories about Maxwell's newfound fatherhood. Investors questioned his commitment to Carter Corporation, and the board suggested a sabbatical. One day, as Maxwell prepared for an important meeting, Clara appeared in the doorway, holding a piece of paper. Dad, can you help me with this? He glanced at his watch, then back at Clara. Of course. What is it? It's a letter to Mom. Clara explained. I want to tell her about us. Maxwell sat down, pushing aside his briefcase. Let's write it together. Clara dictated, and Maxwell transcribed. Dear Mom, Dad, and I went to the library today. The one where you met him. He told me stories about you, like how you love daisies and always sang in the car. I miss you every day. But Dad makes sure I know how much you love me. He even lets me pick the ice cream flavors. Even if they're weird, I think you'd be proud of us. Love, Clara. Maxwell added his own note at the bottom. Lucia, thank you for giving me the courage to be the father Clara deserves. She's everything I didn't know I was missing. A few weeks later, Maxwell took Clara on a surprise trip to Harvard. As they walked through the campus, Clara marveled at the towering brick buildings and manicured lawns. This is where you and Mom fell in love, Clara said, her voice filled with wonder. Maxwell nodded. Yes, she changed my life here. They stopped at the library. Maxwell pointed to a corner table. That's where we first met. Your mom told me that some places hold memories, like invisible photographs. Clara touched the table's worn surface. Do you think Mom's memory is here? Maxwell smiled. I know it is. Later, they placed a small bouquet of daisies on the table. Clara wrote in her diary while Maxwell read from Lucia's. They sat side by side, bridging the past and present in quiet companionship. As spring turned into summer, Maxwell and Clara found a new normal. The Beacon Hill house buzzed with life as they hosted family dinners with Clara's maternal relatives. Maxwell marveled at how their circle had expanded, creating a network of love and support. One evening, as the sun set over Boston, Clara stood in the garden, pointing to the sky. There's Mom, she said, indicating the brightest star. Maxwell wrapped an arm around her. She's always with us. Clara leaned against him. Do you think she's happy? He nodded, his voice steady. I think she's proud. For the first time in years, Maxwell Carter felt a peace that came not from financial success, but from the quiet certainty of having built something truly meaningful, a family.